Cool. So we're just going to jump right into this because it makes a lot more sense just walking right through it all. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to take a BusinessObjects Web report, consume that report in InfoBurst, and then take that into Squirrel, consume it into Squirrel, and create a quick little application and show you how quick and easy it is to do that. So if I go ahead and click on my sales revenue report. So I've already put this report together, obviously. It's just a standard little report that it does have multiple tabs, but the key tab that we're going to utilize today is just the main data. So you can see it's just kind of it's just a big old bulk dump of data. Got order year, quarter, month, order month, product group, the employees, the revenue, number of orders, and then a total discount column. So we've got a couple of fields to work with here and view within the dashboard. So I've got that report all done up. So I come over here to InfoBurst. I'm going to log into InfoBurst and get rid of these little pop-ups. Okay, so I'm going to come into InfoBurst. And you can see I already have the report cataloged here along with an XDC, but I want to walk through with exactly how you would do this. So you've got your report made in Webby. You have your InfoBurst server created, you're logged into InfoBurst, you've set up your connection to your BusinessObjects environment within InfoBurst. So you have those credentials all set up, ready to go. If you're unsure on how to do that, we do have helpful articles on our website and all that fun stuff to go through all those steps. But in the concept of time for this presentation, I'm just going to show how to go ahead if it was all set up. So what I would do is I would come here under new document. Again, my platform is already set up on InfoBurst, so I would have platform selected here. I would go to select documents, pick which environment it would be. So for this example, I've got my BusinessObjects, so all set up right here. So this is going to show all of your public folders on your BusinessObject environment. So this one was actually under InfoSol, the InfoSol folder, and you can see I've got my sales revenue Webby report. If I click on that report and hit select, it's going to say adding documents. It's going to say failed because it's a duplicate name. But if I went and selected a different one, so we'll say the revenue detail. I'll select that one. It's going to say adding documents. Give it a second to add, and it's going to pop up the documents added. Boom, we're halfway there. The next part is obviously we need to be able to allow Squirrel to talk to this report to get the data from this report. Now, the way we're going to use for this example is XDC. Now, XDC is really nice because it creates a cache. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, you got to think about it this way. If we were to talk to the Webby report directly, right, we would be, especially if we're using, we have to send back parameters and such like that to filter the report, we have to make that call to the report every single time those connections would run, those parameters get passed back. So we have to call to the report directly every single time, which can hurt performance. It can increase, the time or the responsiveness of the dashboard, I should say. What XDC does is it will actually cache all the information in all that data in the report within itself. So now we're just making calls to this XDC, so your performance is much, much faster. So you don't have to worry about making those calls every single time. It's almost like accessing, the way I like to say it is, it's like accessing an SD card or something like that. It's already stored there for you. So that's the option we're going to go with today. So if I click on the XDC and you started this, you can name it, give it whatever name you want to give. You have a couple options in here as well. We don't need any of those. But then under sources, this is where you would add the report. So you can see it shows a little Webby icon that says main data. So if you remember, that tab was the one that I wanted to use. So if I come back and actually hit a plus here, if I went to that report again, I can select any and all of those tabs on the report to use. And this will all be cached within that XDC. So you can see where this can kind of be very, very beneficial, because if I had all of those added, I can come over to my queries now and literally just query against whichever tab I want to use. So you could have like a query that's referencing main data, or I could have a query that references the revenue tab, the discount tab. It's very, very, very friendly and makes it a lot easier to basically query against. So I've already set up a couple queries here. So I've got discounts month. So I'm grabbing a specific month. It's actually a hierarchy setup. So what's going to happen is I'll be able to select a year. So this is going to give me a distinct year list. So if I run this, you can see from that report, I'm getting my distinct years that are available in that report. And then I have quarters, and then I also have month. So the quarter is going to filter off of what year is selected. And then the month is going to filter off of year and quarter that's selected. So I'm not only going to be bringing data in from the report, I'm also going to be passing parameters back to filter the data that comes in. So it's going to be much more user intuitive than just a bulk data dump into a dashboard. And then these other two queries that I'm going to be utilizing, we're going to bring in sales by employee and sales by group. So we'll see that in a second, but that's just the general idea of these queries. And you can see you can get pretty expansive with these queries. If you make them however you want, make it work with your data how you need it to, so your data is coming in exactly how you want it and filtering exactly how you want it. So if I jump over to Squirrel, so this is Squirrel365. I've already gone through the initial screen. I've selected just a default size, but this is what you'll be greeted with. Everything's all blank. We've got all of our components and such over here. So what I want to do first is I want to bring in that year column because, like I mentioned, it's a hierarchy. So I want year first. So what I need to do is I come under the connections tab. I'm going to hit this drop down. You can see we have a bunch of different little connections here that we can select from. For this example, we're going to be using the XDC cache query because we are connecting to an XDC, but we're also using the specific queries off of that XDC, which is all under that queries panel that we saw in InfoBurst. So I come under here, I'm going to add a connection, hit the little plus sign. I need to connect to my URL of my InfoBurst server, and then do my credentials here. Same credentials if you were logging into InfoBurst. It's going to pop in saying I'm connected. And then once I do that, it's going to show me every single XDC that is on that InfoBurst environment. So for this example, I need to scroll all the way down to this one. And we are going to grab the order year. So I'm grabbing that specific query. I can use multiple queries, but I only want this one particular. So order year, I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to bind it to a couple rows because I know it's only a couple entries. Give it a quick color. And then usage, I have it on refresh on load. This is fine because this connection is not dependent on any parameter or anything else. So I just need a bulk data dump. So if I go and click over into debug, you can see the connection's bringing in those years. Bing, bang, boom, that connection's done. We're good to go. So I'm going to actually copy those entries so that I can stick those here and mess around with the dashboard further and build this out. And then I will type that year. So if I go back to these queries, like I had mentioned before, we got the month and the quarters. Those have parameters that need to be passed. So I need to pass something back to get the data. Now the quarters is the next in line. So to pass this, I need to consume this somewhere in the dashboard. The easiest way is to simply get a dropdown. I'm going to tell it to display all these years. And then I'm going to have it insert somewhere. So I'm just going to have it insert right next to it. Give that another color. Say this is the destination. And the last step, I always like to hype on this. Make sure under interactivity, you give a selected item, because if I go into debug right now, it's going to say, please select, nothing's inserted in there. If I set up the second connection, there's no parameter for it to look at. So that second query is not going to return anything. It's not going to run. So what I like to do and always hype on is, okay, let's just, for this purpose, we're just going to do whatever the first value is, just make that the default selection. just go with it. You can change it later, but this way you have something that is being moved for that parameter for this next query. So if I hit debug, you can see 2008 gets inserted in here. Great, we're good. I'm going to come back to my connections, and now I'm going to add a second connection. So same steps, get everything all set up, log back in, find my XDC again. And then this one, I want the quarters, because the quarters is dependent upon the year selection. So I select quarters. And I'm going to go over why I'm not putting these. I'm not just going, okay, quarters, month, year. I'm not doing all three queries on one connection. I'll go over that in just a second. So quarters, same thing. I'm just going to do that because there's only going to be 4 quarters in a year. I should have colored that in. Whoops. So I know that something's there, and you can see parameters. Squirrel already knows that I have set up a parameter, that I defined a parameter in InfoBurst in that SQL. So it's saying, hey, I need a year to give you the data that you want. So I'm going to have that look at that destination of this dropdown, because that's the year, obviously, that I'm selecting the user is allowed to select. Now, instead of refresh on load, we don't want this one. The reason is because we want this query to run only when a year gets selected or changes. So I'm going to click on the refresh on cell change, click on this destination box. Now this query specifically is only going to run when it sees a year get populated here and or change. So if I hit debug, you can see 2008 automatically, because I had it automatically inserting there by default. And now I have 4 quarters. If I go to 2009, it's probably not going to change because every year has 4 quarters. But, oh, there we go. Perfect. 2011 only has 2 quarters worth of data. So you can see every time I'm changing the year, it's telling that query to run again, go get me the new quarter list based on that year. Excuse me. So now for months, we need to rinse and repeat. But I need to get this list first and get a destination for this, because the months needs both of these. So I'm going to duplicate the dropdown. I already bound it to those values. The label is going to get inserted here. And then the default, we're just going to do Q1. So if I come under my connections, I want another XDC connection. IBIS again, IBIS, log in. And then I needed month. All right, so this can obviously have up to 12, so we'll go a little bit longer. And then, as you can see, it's found the parameters, so I need year and quarter. So year is going to go right there, quarter is going to go right there. Now, because I have more than one parameter, I can't just say, hey, refresh on cell change like I did previously for the quarters, because I need to see 2 cells. So the easiest way to do this is, I'm going to go ahead and color this because this is going to be my destination for the month. But down below, I'm going to color this, we'll do blue. But I need to see both year and quarter. So the easiest way to do this is just have it reference that cell and that cell. So obviously it's blank right now. But when I hit this, it's grabbing both. So it's saying 2008 quarter 1, these 3 months have data. If I change this to quarter 2, these 3 months have data. Quarter 3, quarter 4, so on and so forth. Obviously, if I change the year, quarter 1, same thing. So it is looking at when both of these are now changing, which is what we want. So that's how you're able to have a query look at multiple selections. Now this, it's not limited to 2. You could have a query that has like 20 parameters, right? You have to have them looking at 20 different things that can get selected because you want it to be to filter very, very, very low. to a very, very detailed level, you would just do the same thing. You would just make sure it references each and one of those parameters that it needs to look at. So that way, when any of those change, this connection will kick off, get you the up-to-date data, and display the correct data for what's been selected. Now, I had mentioned that I was going to explain why I didn't put these all under the same query, or the same connection, because like I showed, you can select multiple queries per one of these connections. And that's because each of these connections have different triggers. The year doesn't have any parameters, so it just refreshes on load. The quarter is dependent upon the year, so it needs to see the year change. So the refresh on cell change, it's looking at that one. The month has two dependencies, it needs to look, two parameters it needs to look at. So I can't use the same refresh on cell change that I did with quarter. It's different because it's looking at two compared to one. So that's why I did that. Now let's say, if they were all looking at the same parameters, or they didn't have parameters, I could just get those to refresh on load, then yeah, I could have put those all under either the year or the quarter, whatever worked best. I could put those all in the same one, and they would all run whenever, if it was refresh on load or refresh on cell change, they would all run together. Perfectly fine, you won't run into any issues. But again, because this is a hierarchy type of menus, I can't put them together. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this because now I need my months. So this will go, we'll just do this. Label is going to get inserted there. And that's all fine. So then I'm going to go ahead and debug this again. Quarter one, grab me my, copy these. And again, I'm just copying these because it makes development and working within here a lot easier. And then get my default selection. So now you can see I have year, quarter, and month. Great. What the heck does that mean? We just did 3 different drop downs. How is that a dashboard? Well, now let's actually get some data. So I'm going to grab another query. And this is going to now grab, I'm now going to grab these 2 queries. So by group and by employee. And this will actually demonstrate how we can use 2 queries in one, because they are feeding off of the exact same 3 parameters, the year, quarter, and month. Go to log in again. All right, so I want both of these. So you can see it shows that I have 2 selected, and it looks like this. So you're not going to get mixed up. It tells you exactly which query you're binding, the parameters for that query, the second query, the parameters for that query. So you're not going to get mixed up. So if I go in here, I'm going to bind this to sheet 2. And I actually cannot remember off the top of my head how many columns I need to prep for. So that I'll come back here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 columns that I need to account for. The rest is all parameters. So if I come back here, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll just do a big old chunk. Now, one thing to note is your bindings. That was a good example. The bindings, you need to make sure you have the same amount of columns that you're bringing in. So if your query says, I want to bring in column 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z. So you'd have 3 columns. You need to make sure you're binding your connection to at least 3 columns wide. Because if you don't, so say I have 3 columns coming in, and I only bind to 2, you're only going to see column 1, column 2. It'll still bring in the data. You're just not going to see everything that you wanted to see. And the same thing goes for rows. So you want to make sure you are binding to a large enough space that's going to accommodate all the data coming in. A good rule of thumb, overcompensate. Bring in more rows, not columns, but more rows than what you would think, because that way, when the data grows, you don't have to worry about coming in here, rebinding everything and making all these adjustments. You've already accounted for it. All right, so I've done that. I bound to my spreadsheet. Now I need to get my month, my year, and my quarter. And now the same thing for the group. I'm going to do my bindings over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll go all the way down. Same place. Month, year, and quarter. So just like how I did here, I need to account for this connection to see changes in all 3 of these. So I'm going to come back over here. That way it's all in the same place. And I'm just going to put this equals the destination for year, destination for quarter, destination for month. Hit enter. Give that a color so I know that's being occupied. And instead of refresh on load, refresh on cell change. And now if I go into debug, it doesn't want to give me data.
Your year and month parameters were swapped.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Ah, thank you. So there you go. Perfect example of what happens when you get click happy. So month, year, quarter. And let me double check this one again. That is quarter, year, and then month. Okay. Let's try this again. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So you can see now I've got my data coming in. So this is by employee, and then this is by product group. So in the query, I've already told it to sum and group based off of either the product group or the employee. So I'm seeing totals across the board for either distinct employees or distinct product groups. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, do a copy, paste, so I have the data to work with. And now let's start visualizing things. And you'll be surprised how quick this can happen. So I grabbed a chart really quick. General, I'm going to say the title. So we'll say this one is the employee revenue. I'm going to turn the subtitle off. I'm going to say ignore in blanks because I don't want to see any values that shouldn't be there. And we will say revenue right here. Values is simply going to be the revenue here. So I'm going to bring this down because it can be larger. Category labels, this will always be my employee names. All right, so there's that. So you can already see the chart has updated. I have my employee names, I have their revenue. Now what I could also do a secondary series to say, because this is discount, so this is also revenue, or yeah, this is also a currency. So what I can do here is this will say discounts, values, same amount. And I just have to grab the values because I've already done the category labels. Category labels will always be the same. So you can see, obviously, my revenue is a lot higher, which is making my discounts very, very, very low. So what I can do for this is actually do a secondary axis. And now you can see it side by side a lot better. So I have my higher number over here, my lower number over here, but now we can do a side by side comparison of, hey, here's the actual revenue, here's the discounts that were given, so on and so forth. So there's one chart. And now if I come into here, let's do this. Instead of another bar chart, let's do a combination chart. Bring this chart in, ignoring blanks. This one is going to be our product group revenue. Turn the subtitle off. Individual series. So the first one is going to be the revenue again. There we go. Grab my category labels. Notate that this is revenue. And then this will be discounts. Categorize blue, good. And then I want these on secondary axis. And I actually did it backwards than what I wanted to do. So I'm going to come down here to styling because I wanted the discounts to be the line. So I'm going to switch that, go up to revenue. This will be the column. Get that adjusted. Okay. Primary axis, secondary axis, good. So you can see how quick, once you, the longest part is really just getting your data articulated via the SQL, like just defining the SQL statements, how you want it to articulate the data to come in how you want. And then you set up the connections, data comes in, and it's very quick and easy to start visualizing the data. So now if I go under here, I go to 2009, the chart, everything's going to change and display respectively on what needs, based on these parameters here, what needs to be displayed. Now we can sit here and customize these components and make them look exactly how we want. One of the biggest things that's already bugging the crap out of me is the tooltips. As you saw when I kind of hovered a little bit, they're not displaying correctly. I need them to be in currency. So I'm going to switch these to currency, 1000 separator, do that for both of these. Currency, USD, thousands. So now if I go and preview this, you can see my revenue and everything is, they've got the currency on there. Where was this? And we'll do 2 decimal places. Just to clean it up a little bit more. All right, go to preview. All right, so you can see now my revenue, it has dollar signs, it has commas, it has the 2 decimal places, so it's nice and cleaned up. It's a lot easier to see. And we can do that with the axes as well, as you can change those to currency display as well. Or because the tooltips are on, it's hovering the value, we can just completely turn them off. So you can start customizing this as you see fit. But you can see it's very, very easy and very quick to start putting visualizations to your data. Get the data in there, you get your parameters set up so those can be selectable by the user, and then it's literally just throw in your visualizations, bind them to your data, and you're good to go. You're off to the races. So you can see what's nice with that hierarchy is I changed to Q2, but because Q2 did not have an entry for January, the list already auto updated for me, and it defaulted to that first entry, which didn't break anything. So I'm still seeing data, nothing went blank. But yeah, so you can, that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Hey, JZ, no questions so far. Thank you for showing us that. I mean, obviously, you're seeing a lot of people integrating Squirrel with BusinessObjects these days, right?
Right.
And producing, not just business intelligence dashboards, but fully functional applications with it.
Yes, very, very many, and with not just one report source, but it could be multiple reports that it's being drawn from.
Yeah, and of course you could do write back as well, which allows you obviously to have a two-way application as opposed to just a read-only application.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's great. Okay, no, I don't see any questions that have come in. Thank you very much. That was very informative.